next year. I've worked in schools or colleges most of my life, places that had calendars like this. So, I mean, how many of you on Zoom or here like have a feeling about, like, do you still have a back to school feeling? Even if you're not, some, right? You know, the binders, the divide, like all the new stuff that still looks really great. So, and usually I kind of know what's coming, right? It's the start of the year and now I can look ahead, and at church, I usually plan the whole year by now. There's a calendar that I hand out that shows what's happening. And this year is not like that. There's no calendar made. I don't know what's happening next week. This is my first time back in the building doing Time for All Ages in person in 530 days. So I thought about this beginning again for a long time. And now that I'm here this week and I was getting ready for it, I was very aware of how different it was than what I thought it would be. And that's actually been pretty hard for me. You know, this whole time I've been just dying to get back in the building and be with everybody. And I came last week just to watch and was like, the mask is hot. I felt kind of self-conscious around people that I've known for years and years who are all super friendly and nice. I felt shy. I actually used the word shy. I felt shy, which isn't something I feel very often here anyway. So I realized that what I actually want to do for this Time for All Ages, and people who are watching can still do this with me. The thing that I love the most about being here is that I don't feel alone. I wrote on some little piece of paper that the chalice lighting included the language, I think, show us that we're not alone, as one of the pieces. And that's why I love coming here in community, because it reminds me that I'm not alone. I'm not alone as a human being with dealing with the stuff that I'm dealing with. I'm not alone trying to make the world better. A lot of things like that. And the pandemic has made me feel very alone a lot of the time. It's been really hard, I think, for most of us. So what I actually want to do right now is something that helps me do two things: not feel so alone, and it also helps me be right in the moment. So I want to do some breathing together, and that's it. This is going to be a very simple thing. So I invite you, and you can also just sit and watch or close your eyes. You don't have to do any of this if you don't want to. I invite you to close your eyes if that is comfortable for you. And just take a moment to feel yourself wherever you are, at home, in the room, on a couch. So feel the chair underneath you or what you're sitting on. Feel your feet on the floor if they're there. So we're just trying to kind of come into this present moment right here. And now try to imagine the people around you in this room right now. You don't have to look at them, just kind of imagine, right? I'm in front of you or to the side of you. So they're like little spots of light in your mind that you can picture, and imagine the light that is in you, that is always in you, no matter how you're feeling, going out and connecting with the light from other people. So it's like a web of light. And if you're watching this at home or later, you can still do this. You can imagine us in this room connecting with you. The light goes that far. Or we're at home if you're watching this tomorrow. So just imagine your light going out, connecting to the light of some other people. And now let's take a nice, easy breath together. So breathing in and breathing out. And one more, breathing in and breathing out. Just being aware that you are never totally alone, even if you feel that way. You can always do this light connection with us or with me, and open your eyes if you want to. And the other thing I'll say just about beginnings is every breath is actually a possibility of a beginning. So if you're not going back to school, but you're wanting that kind of like, here I am again. I get to try again. I get another year. Maybe this is the year I'll get into the play. Maybe this is the year that, Michelle will look at me in science class. Every breath is a totally new breath. Every breath is different than the last breath. So every breath is in fact a new beginning, and you always have that with you no matter where you are. You can always restart the day with a new breath. So what I will leave you with for the week, I guess, is an invitation to try to find a time this week, maybe today while you're remembering it. See if sometime, somewhere, you can pause for a moment and send some light out and get some light back, and take a breath to just feel that beginning, especially at a time when it can feel like we're moving backwards a bit with COVID stuff. We're always moving forward. So thank you. I'm very happy to be with you all. And I love you, and kids and people out there, I love you and miss you. And take a breath this week.
This is our time for milestones and passages. We mark transitions in our lives and the lives of others. And we enjoy the surprises of transitions that we didn't expect when we came, like first-time visitors, and the transitions of people we did expect, like Ronnie starting. I have one yellow card given to me by Abby. Abby Proctor and Bill Sessions were married in Woodstock, Vermont on August 28, 1971 at the historic Unitarian Universalist Church there, 50 years ago this coming Saturday. Abby's father, who was fond of composing fake headlines, wrote one for this occasion. William K. Sessions III marries commoner in Vermont. Abby and Bill moved to Addison County in 1973 and lived happily ever after. Congratulations on that, because you've been part of our happily ever after too for as long as I've known you. I actually have a personal milestone as well. About the same time you called me to be minister in 2012, my oldest son, Linus, started on a PhD in physics. And last week, he officially finished the last leg of that. And he and his partner flew off to England for postdoc work at a laser laboratory in Oxford. And they are just out of their minds with joy at the moment, because he doesn't officially start work till next Monday. So they've just been going from pub to pub and and equipping their new home. So we're very proud of him and very happy for them. There are some other milestones that are unfolding around us. I don't want us to forget them. The milestone of transition in Afghanistan is so much upheaval and so many lives. And if the ripple effects haven't reached any of us personally here in Addison County yet, and I know they have reached some people, they will in months to come. Similarly, the fires and the droughts the west of the United States, for those of us who have a connection we're already feeling that deeply. And finally, the disaster in Haiti. Again, another personal connection there for me. My daughter works for the USAID in the Emergency Response Division and has been working 16-hour days, helping to deploy people there. But I know that other people have all kinds of connections to this as well, including Esther Thomas in our congregation who has family there. So I invite you into a period of silent meditation to figure out where your heart is this morning for all of the spoken and unspoken milestones and passages, joys and concerns. I'll bring you out of that with a brief prayer, which will lead into Ronnie's musical interlude. Spirit of life-giving love and love-giving life, our lives are filled with endings, some devoutly hoped for, some deeply regretted and feared. Teach us to be present to those endings, but even in the deepest moments of connection with them, to notice the call to new beginnings growing already in that atmosphere, and to be ready to embrace those new beginnings as the time for them to flower approaches in our lives.
Our ancient reading today is the first 5 verses of chapter 1 of the Gospel of John, which is believed to be the last written of the 4 Bible Gospel stories. This translation is the New Revised Standard Version. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came into being through him, and without him, not one thing came into being. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. Our more modern reading is the opening lines of Jane Austen's famous romantic novel, Pride and Prejudice. This work first appeared in print in 1813. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. However little known the feelings or views of such a man may be, on his first entering a neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he is considered as the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters.
Well begun is half done. The Greek philosopher Aristotle is recorded as saying it first. I'm pretty sure my grandmother Alma has said it most often. Usually she was talking about the opening round of her latest game of solitaire, but she made it clear to me it was a good thing to think about whenever I embarked on something new. Ronnie's first steps as director of music this week encouraged me to plan to reflect with you about beginnings today. But I didn't realize how important beginnings would feel as a topic until the pandemic began to take a real turn for the worse last month. For a long time, we had been thinking about beginning a new church year in September with the pandemic mostly behind us. Now, we don't really know where we are headed. It doesn't make the future of our music program less important, quite the contrary, but it makes it harder to get a fix on what might feel like a great beginning for Ronnie and for the church year in general. To my surprise, it got me thinking about shaving. I shaved off my beard in January for the first time in decades. I did it for 2 reasons. I wanted to do something that was literally in my face to remind me and to encourage you to not get mired in the past while we waited for vaccination. And I did it because I had read that masks work more effectively to halt the spread of the virus on clean-shaven faces. But the truth is that I don't like shaving, and from the start, I expected this to be a temporary change, not a new beginning. Now, though, as the Delta variant spreads and COVID looks a lot more like an ongoing threat, I'm wondering if I will be able to quit shaving. Now, most of you must be asking, as I do, why is Barnaby fretting over something as mundane as this? Like all of you, I've got plenty of global and national scale reasons to be heartsick, and even some local ones worth losing sleep over. I think this choice about shaving is bugging me because it symbolizes how underlying all of our big reasons for feeling frustrated and in some cases clinically depressed is a familiar enemy, the soul-crushing weight of daily life tasks, habits, and decisions that each in and of themselves is just a little thing. We know or should know that all the small stuff is linked to bigger problems. We try not to think about it often, though, and it's unpredictable when it forces itself on us. So have a little pity for me as I get hung up on this particular topic of shaving. I see it's a personal decision that's meaningless in the larger scheme of things, but I can't shake my awareness that the blade packaging is my unnecessary contribution to a stream of waste plastic choking our oceans and fragmenting into permanent damage of our food chain. And that's without even considering the energy costs and manufacturing pollution necessary to sustain billions of men and women shaving, whether they use an electric shaver or modern versions of razor blades. The connection between our laughably small daily choices and the big issues can be hard to grasp in the best of times, but the pandemic is a stress super spreader. And maybe that's why shaving is occupying so much of my mind space against my will. Maybe it's just a stand-in for other stresses. So the bigger issue is, how do we show a healthy regard for our stress? I was struck by how beautifully Hannah Sessions danced around this question 2 weeks ago in the worship service that she led. I told Abby there would be a time for her to be proud in my sermon, but I really was impressed. Hannah contrasted the planning required for her and Greg to run Blue Ledge's goat farm and cheese business with the narrowing of her focus to simply seeing what is in front of her when she paints. Planning and artistic visions are different worlds, mentally and spiritually, but they are both creative processes. Hannah got me thinking about creativity as a driver of well-begun, well-done results, not well-begun, half-done, well-begun, well-done results. I haven't the foggiest notion how my shaving dilemma is going to play out, but I realized in thinking about it that I do have deep faith that I will be happiest with the outcome if I maintain a creative frame of mind and looking at the issues swirling around it for me. So what are the odds I can pull that off, or you can do the same with all the small issues that are somehow bedeviling you with their connection to larger concerns? Well, here's the good news portion of my message for you this morning. First, we are inherently attracted to creativity, just like plants to light. Our images of gods in every culture are linked to creative power. And for those of us who see a universe without creator gods as a source, well, it's hard not to be awed that evolution is abundantly creative in the midst of repeated mass extinction. I'd go so far as to say that while none of us are as creative when we begin new things as we could be with more practice, simply noticing what is new or could be new forces us into creative thinking, whether we intend that or not. So we are inherently attracted to this thing we so need. The second bit of good news, we have extraordinary tools, including all of the senses we inherited from earlier life forms and have extended through invention. Within the lifetime of our elders, we have learned to see billions of years into the past with our telescopes and deep inside atoms with various types of microscopes, to hear what is whispered on the far side of the planet, to speak instantly to millions of others with a few strokes of a keyboard. And most of all, we have languages whose communicative power is exploding as we create new works of art and compare and contrast the ways of seeing the world they express. And I am using languages in the broadest sense here: written languages, music, visual languages. All of it is exploding in our time. Our ancestors understood the creative power of human language. And you hear that in the biblical Gospel of John. What was their name for the creative power in God capable of becoming an expression of universal love in the form of a human Jesus? It is the Word. And in the older Jewish story called Genesis, the act of creating the universe itself out of chaos is intelligible speech. Let there be light. Let there be this. Let there be that. I'm not going to read all of Genesis to you. It ends up with, let there be faith, that we have the tools to create, even in a pandemic, new things that are well begun. So finally, here's the best news I have to offer. It can feel like our brave claims that we are going to come out of this better are crumbling before the rising tide of, I need this to be over. But behind the noise, there are signs that the forces of we are going to come out of this better remain on the march. So take this little example that recently brought me a lot of joy. As you heard, more than 2 centuries ago, an unknown writer named Jane Austen completed Pride and Prejudice, an anonymously published romance. This novel about the wealthy, stiffly proper estate owner, Mr. Darcy, whom probably ends up married to the spirited but relatively poor Elizabeth Bennet, begins with that wry observation that has become one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature. It is a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. This specific line has nothing to do with my message this morning. It's here out of love for my wife, Michelle, who is such a fan of Jane Austen's writing that she regularly follows and occasionally posts on Jane Austen fan fiction sites. Now, many of you know what fan fiction sites are. They're where people attracted to a particular story, whether it's Harry Potter or Jane Austen's novels, or I think another extremely popular one is the Twilight series, and there are a few others. But people gather and they talk about what wasn't written in the novel, and they write new sections of it, and they write new versions of it. And they can be anything from very perceptive, gentle tweaks to completely outlandish things introducing zombies and sci-fi and time travel, or inevitably adding some pornography to the story that wasn't there, whatever. One day recently, Michelle called my attention to an extraordinary controversy that had unfolded on one such site. Now, a person on the site had been gradually writing her variation on Pride and Prejudice. And she got to the end and she was kind of in a rush to finish. And Darcy was in a lot of financial trouble because Mr. Wickham, the evil character, had stolen money from him and used it to buy properties in the New World. And all this got wrapped up very quickly with Darcy gaining control of the new properties through the intervention of an uncle. All of his financial worries, his being a tenant, suddenly disappeared. Story wrapped up. This was posted and there was a response. I'm deeply troubled that Darcy inheriting property that was existing because of enslaved people's work is the solution to his troubles. And all he says about it is, oh, what a blessing. And this engendered an amazing conversation that went on for days and pages about unconscious white racism and how we dismantle it and how easy it would have been to write another ending. And the author being very defensive and saying, I didn't say anything about his attitude towards slavery. Maybe he would have just sold the plantation and walked away because he didn't want to be involved. But that's my story and I get to write my story. It went through all the classic forms of white defensiveness about someone being called out on something that's unconsciously racist. And there was accusations that the people who had called her out on it and saying she could easily have written another ending and were bullying and anything to turn it around to make the white person the victim. And there was some very interesting Jane Austen research that popped up. Jane Austen had sea captain brothers who had seen slave ships on the sea and become abolitionists themselves. And Jane Austen's other characters who owned slaves were negative characters in Mansfield Park. It was sort of inconceivable that she would have written about gaining properties with enslaved people as a positive solution to Darcy's problems. So this woman had done something that's a sort of a violation of the unwritten rules on some of these fan fiction sites, which is to make the character completely different without really thinking it through. So I found this incredibly interesting, in part because the woman, after defending herself, rewrote the end a little bit. And people then moved on to, did it really have to come to this? Because she was still very aggressive about, well, I'm doing this, but not because you're forcing me. And people posted all of the rules we've heard about in White Fragility and other books about the better way to do this, to ask for people who are offended to explain how it struck them, to ask for different kinds of solutions, to recognize, to act in ways that show that it really wasn't your intent. So all this left me wondering, are we well begun in dismantling racism? It's hard to say. Maybe as a privileged white male, I have no business making a judgment on that. But for what it's worth, even if we're well begun, I have a hard time believing we are half through. But this controversy on a creative website only overwhelmingly white Jane Austen groupies inhabit, I think is an extraordinarily hopeful sign that what began with recognition of what was going on when George Floyd died and this intensification of the conversation about what we need to do, it's an extraordinarily hopeful sign to me that there's unstoppable momentum building for dismantling racism right in the middle of this pandemic, even as it rolls on. So I hope CVUUS works hard and creatively on contributing to that momentum in the months to come. With a new music program and goals like these, we will indeed come out of the pandemic better than we entered it. We will be a beacon, calling back congregants who have drifted away and attracting new ones if we apply all that creativity welling up inside of us to doing the right thing. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing song is Spirit of Life. It's number 129 in your hymnals. If you want to sing, you're free to just, but Poppy, just hang on a second. Free to sing or hum, but I invite you to move to the far corners. We have a small enough crowd that we can do this with really long distances between each other. Sing softly, only with masks, or just hum, or remain silent, whatever you feel safest with. If this makes anyone feel unsafe, I invite them to proceed outside for our period at the end of the service now. There's no reason that you have to be here for this, but this I know is such a special way of our being together. We can't hold hands and we can't hug, but as a down payment on the future, I think we can go part way there, but safely. So spread out if you're gonna sing as far as you can, be near the places that are ventilated, otherwise sit quietly wherever you feel helpful. Of course, in addition to holding hands, we might sing that 2 times through. In the hope, the faith that those times will eventually come, let us go forth doing the work that we can do now to make sure that we come out of the pandemic better than we entered it. Blessed be.
I'm just not taking part in that. The last day of the week for the RIP medical debt. I'm just disappointed that they forgot the service. No. Since you're not, I'm not either. I mean, I don't mean that as in a negative way. I just mean I wasn't terribly enthused, and if
Thank you. Some of you may have noticed that I skipped over the offering. It's the same offering we've been doing all summer. There's a basket on the way out. You can contribute there. You can also just write a check and send it to the office. RIP medical debt, rest in peace medical debt. For those of you who aren't familiar with the concept, hospitals bill massive sums to people. Sometimes they can't collect. The hospital tries to collect and then they give up and they will sell $1,000 worth of debt to a debt collection agency for perhaps $100. And the hospital gets $100 and walks away. The debt collection agency collects all these things and then goes after people to collect the debt and attacks their credit
I'll make
rating and all
something for
kinds of
lunch.
things. At the very lowest end of the
I also
scale,
have some leftover
there are people that the debt
ratatouille. So
agency would
ratatouille,
eventually accept 10 cents for just to get them
Right.
off their books.
I'll add an
RIP
egg to the ratatouille.
medical debt collects all these obligations and for thousands of people pays very small amounts to eliminate their debt, and then it goes back to the credit agencies and cleans up their credit rating. So we are collecting this summer to send a sum to RIP medical debt to retire medical debts for the poorest people who can least afford to pay them and to clean up their credit rating. So I invite you to be as generous as you're able in contributing to that either this morning or during the week, sending a check of some sort to the office. Thanks. Leaving out the offer, you start really where we want to see the points.
Hey, all. Can you hear me? I'm gonna unmute everybody so we can see what you want to do. All right, you should be able to unmute yourselves.
All right. Hi, Margie.
12 people. I'm going to stop recording also.